Summer began yesterday about 5 a.m. Eastern Time. We are firmly in the grasp of summer, and the dog days of summer coming up on July 3rd. Let's take a look at that surface map. A polar front sinking through the Midwest states, through Oklahoma and the Texas Panhandle. Also, the southwestern monsoon is quite active. There it is, infiltrating the deserts of Mexico, extending all the way to Chihuahua and El Paso. The whole area from Durango, Mexico City up to Texas just filled in with this tropical air mass. Not very much of it is making it to the lower elevations of the southwest deserts, but the Mogollon Rim, the higher mountains of New Mexico, and around Las Vegas as well, getting some showers and thunderstorms. And you can see those dew points in the 60s, all the way from El Paso out towards Safford, Arizona, up to 58 there at Tucson, but falling off west of Phoenix. Nevertheless, there are showers and thunderstorms in the Mojave Desert. The southeastern U.S. looking pretty warm there, temperatures up near 100 in some areas, especially there in Georgia. And then further north, a retreating warm front through the northern Appalachians. Then we have that cold front coming through around Cleveland, Buffalo, and Cincinnati. Focusing on the Pacific region, a new cold front working through the Pacific Northwest region, a 534 decameter cold air mass across Prince George, Prince Rupert, and that will have an effect on the central U.S. this weekend into early next week. That will bring a 1032 millibar high into the northern plains, so that will be something to keep an eye on here shortly. Up in Alaska, temperatures are coming up near 70 degrees. This is still several hours away from the afternoon high, so we're expecting a pretty good warm-up in that region later today. The Canadian Arctic still looking quite cool, and even more cold air across Greenland, temperatures in that region in the 30s. The Hudson Bay region has this outgoing weather system moving through northern Quebec, but still that is pulling 50s and 60s pretty far north. This cold front moving through the eastern Great Lakes and Midwest is producing numerous thunderstorms at this time. The visible satellite imagery showing the progression of that front through the eastern Great Lakes, with storms going up around Buffalo, Toronto, and just west of Ottawa, and more storms further down the boundary towards Columbus, Dayton, and around Louisville, Kentucky. Checking in on SPC, not really seeing any major threats. Few severe thunderstorm watch boxes in the northern Appalachians. There's the radar in western New York. Nothing too strong around Buffalo. Looks like one little cell. Somewhat strong there northwest of Rochester. Marine warnings for that. And some slightly stronger cells west of Ottawa. Working down the boundary through western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, a smattering of cells. None of those look particularly severe. The stronger cells do have severe thunderstorm warnings. And that's mostly for wind and small hail. Around Cincinnati and Louisville, the storms look a little bit beefier, a little bit more rain and moisture associated with those, but still the severe structure is really not all that strong. Few severe warnings, again, for the same sorts of ingredients, looking at wind and small hail. And there's the picture along the warm front, some more widespread convection across Chesapeake Bay up towards northern Virginia and up into Pennsylvania. This time of year, we do need to be checking in on NHC, not looking at anything over the next 5 days in the Atlantic. Tropical storm off western Mexico there, Celia 40 knots. Moving to the west-northwest, typically they move somewhat like that, and they dissipate as they get into the cooler water. So looks fairly quiet at this time. And as far as long-term prospects, we check out this area here, look for any closed circulations, any waves, that kind of thing, large precip areas, and so forth. Not really seeing anything. This looks fairly typical for this time of year. There's one little depression or weak tropical storm there off of Venezuela. That's pretty far south, so the lack of Coriolis force will be disrupting that somewhat, but it could still make it into Nicaragua or Costa Rica. Let's see what happens there. This is around the 30th and 1st. Yeah, it crosses the southern Caribbean, moves into Nicaragua there, 999 millibars. But that's pretty much it. The Gulf of Mexico, not really seeing any signals of any early hurricanes or tropical storms. So that's good news. Big Rig Steve, he is off this week, so we'll check back in with him next week. So we'll take a look around the country. We've got that moisture flowing northward. This is mostly mid-level moisture and convective debris. Some of it is down near the surface in the higher elevations, getting some showers and thunderstorms going up at the Sour. Numerous showers and storms across the Mojave Desert there. We got the mountains north of Los Angeles and east of there, all the way down towards San Diego. San Diego right there, Los Angeles there. And these storms are mostly in the deserts. And this is an unseasonably wet pattern for these areas. We're talking about China Lake, Edwards Air Force Base, and Barstow. Some of it also making it into the deserts of Nevada, but I think it is a lot more elevated. And it may be more in the realm of Virga. This looks like high pressure across the Great Basin area. Not much to talk about there. The Pacific Northwest has that cold front moving in. You can see some cold air advection cumulus across the mountains of British Columbia and the Cascades down towards the coastal range. And also on the Pacific coast, cold northerly flow, a combination of open and closed cell stratocumulus indicating cold air advection. Looks like a quiet day in the Dakotas. Do we have any viewers up there? I wonder. I know back when we did the show back in 2016, 2017, we did have a viewer around Grand Forks. I don't know if they're still with us. As we go further south through the plains, we catch up to that frontal zone, which is in Oklahoma, and we pick up more clouds. A lot of this is augmented by isentropic lift over the relatively cool air. And some of that is also convective debris from the southern Rockies. Once we get to Oklahoma and Texas, we start reaching the more tropical moisture. You can really see it there. Towering cumulus all the way from Amarillo to Woodward. Some cells going up around Wichita at the Sour. The air mass does look a little bit drier there around I-44, Oklahoma, and Tulsa. Looks very tropical there in Texas, and we can see the reappearance of the sea breeze. There it is right there. Typically when it's very active, it'll be moving up into the Waco, Tyler, Longview, Shreveport area around dusk. And sometimes it will have showers and thunderstorms. Other times it will just not have very much at all. So that's a feature that's going to move northward during the afternoon. And then further out to the west, you can see that moisture just flooding into the Big Bend area. Typically, we don't see that kind of cloud pattern out there. It tends to be mixed out, combined with a lot of desert air, but not today. That's a very stout southeasterly flow. So the dry line, that appears nowhere on the surface chart. Florida is typically rainy this time of year. However, they have gotten themselves into a northerly flow, which has decimated some of the moisture. As a result, kind of a fair weather pattern in that part of the country. Through the southeastern states, we get into some of that heat. Temperatures near 100 across Georgia, upper level ridging, affecting that area pretty heavily. And as you go further to the west, we get into some of the better moisture and the less capped air. So storms going up across northern Louisiana and central Mississippi. And as we move northeast, we get up into that cold frontal zone. Storms going up along that boundary. And further to the east, you can see the effect of the cool air east of the warm front. That warm front again, running something like that, maybe a little further north. So overlying this area right here, frontal inversion, all the way from Vermont down through Long Island, and also some showers through that zone. Let's take a quick look at Europe and see what's going on. I know we don't really tend to focus on this area very much. The problem is there's so much to cover in North America that a lot of this extra stuff just kind of gets left in the dust. But what we see here, this is kind of looking like maybe a cold front through Spain and something like that. Maybe a warm front. I don't know exactly where that would be, maybe somewhere in here. I'm using a combination of temperature and moisture to find that. You can see the dew points in Germany are much cooler, 40s and 50s. So that's all going to be polar air. And then further to the south, 60s dew points in France. And further to the south, dew points in the 60s and 70s in Sardinia and Corsica. And if you really want to get into some heat, this time of year, the Gulf states, usually the last week of June, the first week of July, they get some incredible heat. Now keep in mind, this is the middle of the night there. We need to run this back. So this is 12Z, 117, 113, 118. This is a Kuwait right here. So certainly some very hot weather. And then down there in Saudi Arabia, looks like 115 around Riyadh. So yeah, that's certainly some brutal heat, but we have seen worse. We've seen days with 120s, and I think that was either last year or the year before where that happened. Back at home, any 120s today? No, not really. Looking at 100, as we mentioned there in Georgia, also Memphis, expected to tie their record of 100 degrees today. Same thing in San Antonio, 101, tying a record. There's the records for tomorrow, looking at 102 to 104 along the Gulf Coast there. One thing that is a little bit unusual is on the east coast of Florida, we're going to be seeing 69 tomorrow morning, which comes within a degree of the record, which was set back in the 1940s. So we've got a combination of unseasonably cool air during the morning and unseasonably hot air during the afternoon. And as you might guess, that's due to dry air. You can see those dew points in Florida only in the 60s there on the east coast. And up to the north, 50s dew points. So with that low specific heat of the air, that means cool mornings and hot afternoons. And further to the west there in Texas, tying the record from Houston to San Antonio. There's how it looks for Friday. Continued hot around New Orleans up to Meridian, Mississippi, and Shreveport there, breaking the record by 1 degree. Those same areas continue to be roasted for Saturday. Lots of 100s from Meridian, Memphis, all the way to Tyler, Texas. For Sunday, looks like a little bit of a break in the heat there. Still 100 from Tupelo to Shreveport, but a lot less aerial coverage on those records. Nothing showing up for Monday. Then for Tuesday, one lone data point there at Galveston, 93 approaching the record for the date. So we are closing in on seasonal normals to start out next week. And let's talk about precipitation. That's certainly very important this time of year. 3 main components starting this out. The outgoing weather system on the East Coast, the Western Canada system we talked about that will be moving into the northern plains, and also the very active monsoon pattern in the desert Southwest. So as this system sinks in, over the weekend we're going to see those precip amounts come up. There they are there. Probably some MCS activity along that boundary. And as that front sinks south, it will carry the precip with it. There it is in Texas. Meanwhile, good plume there of monsoon moisture through Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado. Then going into next week, looks like a lot of rain there in Texas and the southeastern states where, they can certainly use that. Looks like the change in the upper level patterns probably disrupts the monsoon a little bit. Looks a little bit drier there in Arizona. And then we're looking at a lot of Gulf Coast precip for late next week. Kind of dry in the central states and some indication of another Pacific system tracking maybe a little bit more to the east around July 2nd. That's all for this edition of Forecast Lab. I do want to ask you all to post in the comments where you're located. You can either post your exact town or you can post a general area, West Coast, East Coast, whatever you're comfortable with. I would like to know where everybody is. And I also think that the increased comment activity, a little bump there in the comments, could help a little bit with our visibility in the YouTube algorithm. So we're kind of knocking out two birds with one stone, but I'm definitely curious where everybody is, so please hop in and post your location, and maybe I can focus in on some of these areas in a little bit more detail. And that'll do it for the Wednesday edition. We'll see you back here on Friday for another episode. Take care. Bye-bye.